Peppa Pig's neighborhood always seemed like the perfect place. But today, something strange moved into the house next door. A bright yellow moving truck arrived early morning. The new neighbor looked friendly enough from distance. It was SpongeBob with his square shape and smile. Peppa and George watched excitedly from their window. Mummy Pig suggested they welcome their new neighbor properly. The family prepared a basket of fresh cookies. Daddy Pig knocked on SpongeBob's door with enthusiasm. The yellow sponge answered with an unusually wide grin. SpongeBob's eyes seemed different up close, but nobody noticed. He thanked them politely for the warm welcome. The first week passed peacefully without any problems. SpongeBob waved cheerfully every morning from his garden. Peppa invited SpongeBob over for afternoon tea and games. He accepted the invitation with that same strange smile. During tea time, SpongeBob's laugh echoed strangely through house. It sounded hollow and somehow mechanical in nature. George noticed SpongeBob never blinked during their conversation. His eyes remained fixed like glass marbles. That night, Peppa heard weird scratching sounds next door. The noises continued until early morning hours. The next day, SpongeBob's garden looked completely different. All flowers had turned an unnatural shade. Susie Sheep came to visit but felt uncomfortable. She whispered that something felt terribly wrong. Pedro Pony refused to play when SpongeBob was around. He claimed the yellow neighbor made him sick. Strange things began happening around the neighborhood frequently. Toys disappeared and reappeared in impossible places. Children started having nightmares about a grinning yellow face. The dreams felt too real to be imagination. SpongeBob's house glowed with eerie light every night. Red shadows danced behind his curtained windows. Peppa finally looked closely into SpongeBob's eyes one evening. They were completely black with tiny red dots. His smile never changed, even when nobody watched. It remained frozen in that unnatural position. The neighborhood children began avoiding SpongeBob's house completely, but he continued watching from his window. Late at night, residents heard his mechanical laughter. It came from everywhere and nowhere at once. SpongeBob still waves from his garden every morning, but now everyone knows something is wrong. Peppa Pig's house always seemed like the safest place, full of warmth and joy. But today came a letter that would change everything forever. Grandpa Pig received an invitation from an old friend. The yellow envelope smelled of seawater and something strange. The letter was signed with the name SpongeBob SquarePants. Grandpa smiled, remembering his younger days by the sea. Peppa's family gathered for a trip to the sea. Everyone was excited to meet Grandpa's mysterious old friend. The road to SpongeBob's house seemed endless and long. The landscape became increasingly dark and desolate around them. The friend's house looked like a giant pineapple, but something about its appearance caused deep unease. SpongeBob greeted the guests with a wide smile. His eyes seemed too bright and completely unnatural. Inside the house reigned a strange atmosphere of silence. The walls were covered with paintings of empty eyes. At the dinner table, SpongeBob told stories cheerfully. His voice sounded mechanical, completely without any emotions. Peppa noticed that food on plates was moving. Tiny tentacles wiggled in the jelly and soup. George tried to play with the host's toys. All toys stared at him with empty, lifeless eyes. Daddy Pig asked about the bathroom politely. SpongeBob pointed to a door with an ominous smile. In the bathroom, the water was black as tar. Thick, dark liquid dripped slowly from the faucet. Mummy Pig heard strange sounds from the basement. It sounded exactly like a child's crying. Grandpa Pig began remembering his old friend clearly. But memories seemed foggy and somehow distorted. SpongeBob offered to show his photograph collection proudly. In all pictures, people looked terrified and scared. New portraits appeared on the living room walls. They depicted members of Peppa's family perfectly. Peppa tried to open the front door desperately. The handle wouldn't turn, as if locked from inside. The house windows began slowly darkening by themselves. Outside, it was becoming darker and darker. SpongeBob continued smiling that same unchanging smile. His teeth seemed sharp like needles. The family realized they were completely trapped inside. Grandpa's old friend was not what he seemed. SpongeBob's eyes glowed with red light in darkness. His laughter echoed throughout the entire house. At the last moment, Grandpa remembered the truth. His friend had disappeared in the sea years ago. The house began dissolving like a desert mirage. The family found themselves on an empty beach. SpongeBob stood in the waves and waved goodbye. His silhouette slowly disappeared in the sea foam. Peppa Pig's bedroom always seemed like the safest place. But tonight, something was terribly wrong beneath her bed. Strange, scratching sounds echoed from under the frame. Peppa lay still, listening to mysterious noises below. The sounds grew louder each passing night. Something was definitely moving in the darkness. Peppa tried to ignore the disturbing sounds, but curiosity was stronger than her fear. Mummy Pig tucked Peppa into bed as usual. She didn't hear the eerie sounds underneath. The scratching became rhythmic, almost like a song. A twisted melody that made Peppa crawl. George slept peacefully in his room nearby. He remained unaware of the growing terror. Daddy Pig snored loudly downstairs in living room. His snoring masked the sinister sounds above. Peppa gathered courage to peek under the bed. Her heart pounded as she leaned over. Two glowing red eyes stared back at her. They belonged to something that shouldn't exist. A yellow square figure emerged from shadows. It had sharp teeth and terrifying grin. The creature introduced itself as SpongeBob with voice. But this wasn't the friendly character known. His laugh was mechanical and without warmth. It echoed through the room like machinery. SpongeBob's eyes never blinked once during encounter. They remained fixed on Peppa with intent. He beckoned Peppa to come closer to him. His smile grew wider, revealing sharp teeth. Peppa felt an irresistible urge to crawl underneath. Something was compelling her to move forward. The space under bed seemed impossibly deep. It stretched far beyond what seemed possible. SpongeBob's laughter grew louder as Peppa approached. The sound filled her head completely. Peppa crawled deeper into the dark space. The familiar bedroom disappeared behind her. The walls around her became wet and slimy. They pulsed like they were somehow alive. SpongeBob's voice whispered promises of endless fun, but his words felt cold and empty. Peppa realized she couldn't turn back anymore. The entrance had vanished without trace. Morning came and Mummy called for breakfast. But Peppa's bed remained completely empty. The family searched everywhere throughout the house, but Peppa was nowhere to found. Under the bed, only SpongeBob's laughter remained, waiting patiently for the next child. Peppa Pig's house always seemed like the safest place in the world, but beneath its foundation lay dark secrets that should never be uncovered. Strange sounds echoed from the basement every single night. The family heard dull thuds and mysterious scratching noises. Daddy Pig decided to investigate the source of sounds. He went down to the basement with his flashlight. Behind old dusty boxes, a hidden door was discovered. It was secured with a heavy rusty lock. Mummy Pig joined the search down below them. Together, they broke the old rusty lock completely. Behind the door opened a long, dark tunnel. The air was stale and freezing cold inside. The family slowly moved through the narrow passage. The walls were covered with strange green slime. At the tunnel's end was a small room. In the corner sat a yellow square figure. It was SpongeBob, chained to the cold wall. He looked sad and completely helpless there. SpongeBob begged to be freed from heavy chains. His voice sounded pitiful and very sincere. Peppa felt sorry for the imprisoned creature below. She asked her parents to help him escape. Daddy Pig broke the chains with his hammer. SpongeBob was finally set completely free from captivity. SpongeBob thanked the family with grateful tears. He seemed so kind and sweet and innocent. The family invited SpongeBob to live upstairs with them. He gladly agreed to stay in their home. The first day, SpongeBob behaved perfectly well always. He helped with chores and played with children. But gradually, something began changing inside him slowly. His smile became too unnaturally wide and strange. SpongeBob never slept during the night hours anymore. He just stood there and stared at them. His laughter became increasingly more mechanical sounding each day. There was no real joy in it anymore. Peppa noticed that his eyes were glowing strangely, red light in the complete darkness of night. Food in the house began disappearing mysteriously every morning. SpongeBob was always near the refrigerator watching. Family photographs changed their facial expressions slowly over time. All smiles became sinister and evil-looking. SpongeBob began whispering strange words at night hours. Nobody understood their dark and mysterious meaning. The house filled with creepy atmosphere of fear. Something was terribly wrong with everything around them. The family realized their terrible mistake too late. SpongeBob no longer hid his true nature. Peppa Pig's house always seemed like the safest place, filled with laughter and joy. But today something had changed in the familiar world of little pigs. George was playing alone in the yard while family was busy. His curious gaze fell upon the old building by the lake. The abandoned structure beckoned the boy with its dark windows. Nobody remembered who built this place or when it appeared. George slowly approached the crooked door of the building. Rusty hinges creaked in the cold wind from the lake. Inside the building reigned strange silence and twilight. Dusty floorboards creaked under his small hooves as he entered. Old paintings hung on the walls with smiling faces, but the smiles seemed too wide and unnaturally stretched across features. In the corner stood an old television box. The screen flickered with weak greenish light without any sound. George approached the mysterious device with growing interest and curiosity. A familiar yellow face appeared on the glowing screen. It was SpongeBob, but something was terribly wrong with him. His eyes glowed with red light full of pure malice. Evil SpongeBob smiled at George through the television screen. His teeth were sharp like razor blades, gleaming menacingly. The screen began to crack and spark with electricity. The room filled with ominous buzzing and crackling electrical sounds. George tried to run away, but the door slammed shut. Windows became covered with thick, dark film from the inside. Evil SpongeBob began crawling out from the television screen slowly. His body stretched and deformed in horrifying, impossible ways. The creature's red eyes followed every movement George made. The boy pressed against the wall, trembling with fear. Peppa noticed her brother's absence only by evening time. The family began searching for George throughout the entire house. Daddy Pig searched the garden and surrounding house areas thoroughly. Mummy Pig checked all of the boys' favorite hiding places. They found only small footprints leading toward the lake. The abandoned building stood in complete darkness and eerie silence. The building's door was tightly locked and wouldn't budge. Windows were black like bottomless wells of endless night. The family knocked and shouted, but no answer came. Only echo reflected from the cold walls of structure. Inside the building came weak, childish crying from George. But the sound became quieter and more distant gradually. On the old television screen flashed a malicious smile briefly. Red eyes watched what was happening outside the building. In the morning, the building looked completely ordinary and empty. But George never returned home to his worried family. Sometimes at night, residents hear childish laughter echoing around. It comes from the abandoned building by the lake. Peppa's house always seemed like the safest place in the world. But tonight something sinister lurks behind the glowing screen. Peppa sits comfortably watching her favorite SpongeBob cartoon. The familiar yellow character dances happily on screen. Suddenly, the television screen begins to flicker strangely. SpongeBob's cheerful smile slowly transforms into something terrifying. Red eyes replace the innocent blue ones. Sharp teeth emerge where gentle smile used to be. The evil SpongeBob presses against the screen from inside. Glass begins to crack under his supernatural pressure. With a horrifying crash, the monster breaks through. Evil SpongeBob emerges into Peppa's living room. Peppa screams in terror as the nightmare becomes reality. The creature towers over her with glowing red eyes. Evil SpongeBob's laugh echoes through the house menacingly. His sharp teeth gleam in the dim light. Mama Pig rushes downstairs, hearing Peppa's frightened cries. She freezes, seeing the terrifying yellow monster. The evil creature turns his attention to Mama Pig. His red eyes burn with malicious intent and hunger. Papa Pig appears but immediately backs away in horror. The family huddles together against the supernatural threat. Evil SpongeBob begins to grow larger and more threatening. His presence fills the entire room with darkness. The monster reaches out with twisted yellow hands. He wants to drag the family into his television world. Peppa tries to run but finds herself trapped. Evil SpongeBob blocks every escape route with supernatural speed. The creature opens a portal back to the television. Dark energy swirls around the glowing screen menacingly. One by one, family members are pulled toward the portal. They cannot resist the evil SpongeBob's supernatural power. Peppa watches helplessly as her parents disappear into the screen. She realizes she will be next victim. Evil SpongeBob grabs Peppa with his cold yellow hands. She feels herself being dragged toward the television portal. The living room becomes empty and silent once more. Only the flickering television remains as evidence. Inside the screen, the family is trapped forever. They can only watch as evil SpongeBob seeks new victims. The television turns itself on every night automatically. Evil SpongeBob waits patiently for unsuspecting children. His red eyes scan through the screen constantly. The monster searches for his next innocent victims.